Welcome to the Startup Leader Show, where we learn lessons from startup executives and founders. I'm your host for today, Lisa Dreher, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Brian Manning. He's with Xona Space Systems. He is co-founder and CEO. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Hey, maybe we can start by having you give just a little bit of background on Xona Space Systems.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess what we are doing is probably most succinctly described as super GPS with small satellites. And so what that means is we're building a constellation of these small but powerful satellites to provide very high performance satellite navigation and timing from low Earth orbit. So it's really designed, when we say high performance, not just high accuracy as most people would think, but it's also very high security and high resilience. And it's really designed and targeted at supporting modern safety critical applications. So things like driver assistance, autonomous vehicles, whether that's driving or flying or floating. And what we found is that if you can meet the level of performance that those applications need, you can meet just about everything else and really make an impact in a lot of other industries as well. So it's been really exciting to see where that expands and has potential to expand out to. And a lot of that's just because, GPS it's really tough to kind of comprehend how much value GPS creates in the world, that there's something like 6.5 billion users. And, it's not just Google Maps on your phone. It's the power systems, it's the power grids, it's financial grids, it's banking, it's every form of transportation. And GPS is such a phenomenal system. And it gave the world a taste of what you can do when you have positioning at your fingertips. But now the commercial world's gotten a taste of that, and they want more, and they want it to be better, and they want it much faster. And so that's really what we're building, is something to kind of help fill and accelerate that gap.
Wow, that's amazing and really exciting. So how did you come to be leading Xona Space Systems? What's your
Um,
background?
yeah, so it's we have a pretty awesome team here. I'm really fortunate to be a part of it. And so our whole team, we met back at Stanford days. So there's actually 8 co-founders. It was a fairly large founding team. All of us went to the same grad school. After that, everyone kind of split out and went their different directions. I guess my personal journey, so I went into automotive manufacturing for a while. Then I was at SpaceX working on the Falcon rockets. And then I went back to do an MBA. So I grew up in a bunch of family businesses that we owned, everything from a plumbing shop to a bowling alley. So I've always had that kind of entrepreneurial drive. So went to the MBA. And during that time is when I reconnected with the other folks that became Xona. And the company's kind of formed a lot around the work that Dr. Tyler Reed did, who was our CTO. And he did his PhD basically on how you'd use what's going on in the new space world, which is these large constellations of small satellites, how you could use that to build a new generation of GPS. And this was back in he published the work in 2015. So this is almost 5 or 10 years ago. After that, he went to work at Ford in their autonomous vehicle division. And part of what he was responsible for there was, one, determining what level of performance does a satellite navigation system need to meet to support all these advanced systems and things that are coming out. And the other part of it was, okay, what systems, technology scouting of what systems are out there that can actually meet it. And that's where he was really identifying and realizing the gap between where things are today and where they need to be. And so he was largely the one that kind of started circling the team. And that was about 3 years ago. And we've been off and running ever since. So.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about what you guys are working on, because I think it takes what is happening in the space industry, but makes such a practical use of those huge constellations that are in the process of being launched.
Yep.
Absolutely. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about just how you've found it building this business, and perhaps other businesses that you've been involved in throughout your lifetime and entrepreneurial career. And I really want to start by talking a little bit about what you have found are the biggest keys to your success so far.
First and foremost is the people and just the team. And that's, I think, Xona, starting with a big group of some of really the world's experts in what we're doing, gave us a huge head start. And part of it is, I will say, it's just one of the most wholesome, genuinely good group of people that I've ever gotten a chance to work with. And that goes a lot, especially when you're a small company and growing. And we've definitely tried to carry those values over. And generally believe that any company at its core is at the end of the day a recruiting company, because you're only as good as the things you make, and the things you make are only as good as the people you have. And so I think the team here at Xona has been one of the biggest keys to success, and I think that's been true in other areas too. I mean, I worked on a phenomenal team at SpaceX, and you certainly be able to see the progress and the exciting things that they're able to do. And so in my mind, it all comes back to people. The second piece is just building something that actually solves a problem and building something customers want. There's a lot of cool technology out there. Some of it has very clear use cases and very clear needs in the world. Some of it may not. Some of it may have use cases that'll be here in 10, 20, maybe 50 years. But at the end of the day, like, you've got to make sure that what you're building and what you're working on has a clear connection to your end customers. And you clearly understand what they're looking for and what their needs are. And that's something that we've really taken to heart here, is making sure that we have a very clear vision on what we're doing and really why we're doing it also.
Sure. One of the things that you mentioned in the beginning of our interview here is that you have 8 co-founders. That is a lot. How do you guys deal with disagreements or just kind of running the business when you have so many co-founders?
People have kind of asked us that, and it hasn't really ever come up. I mean, we certainly had our a lot of early discussions on your strategy and things like that early on. But part of the reason, or even part of the benefit of having that many people is building a satellite navigation system is a monster. And so it's in satellite navigation, all the focus goes onto the satellite, right? And a lot of people think, oh, you just launch a satellite and put a signal down, and there you are. And the satellites get a lot of the credit, but I mean, there's the user equipment side, there's the satellite side, there's the ground system side, that there's so many aspects of it that, it's such a big thing that it really took kind of that size of a team before we really, had confidence that we had enough pieces to the puzzle filled in, that this was something that a commercial company could even tackle. Because historically there's really 4 entities that have built a satellite navigation system. It's the US government, the Chinese government, the Russian government, and the European Union. So we're kind of in uncharted territory, and having a large team like that, I think everyone knows their responsibilities. Everyone has their accountability for what they're responsible for, and there's plenty of work to break up and go around between us.
I can imagine. When you think back, what would you say has been the most valuable business lesson you've learned?
Ooh, so there's plenty of those. I think probably one of the biggest ones, and this is kind of what would we I also take that question a little bit. It's like, what would we do differently if we had to do it again? How would we go about this differently? I think so our co-founding team, again, there was like 5 PhDs and 3 master students, all with aerospace degrees. So a very tech heavy group. And as a part of that, I think it's very easy to not give, the proper attention or respect to a lot of the other aspects of the business, which is things like accounting and IT and office management and recruiting. And at the end of the day, I mean, if your founding team should be like the experts, this is, you should know your product, your tech better than anybody else in the world. And if you're taking, the world's experts and you're spending their time on, things that they're not optimized for, it's really just ends up being very inefficient. And so we should have hired a recruiter as like one of the first employees. And we didn't hire someone to really help out on that until I think employee number 20 or 25. And once we had that help on board, everything was like, oh my gosh, why didn't we do this earlier? So I think it's something you really need to, it's too easy as technical founders to put all the focus. And again, a lot of it should be on the engineering side and the tech development, but definitely have to respect that there are other needs within the company also that need to be attended for. And you really should get someone who's, that is what they're optimized, that their skill set is optimized to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. When you think about just developing an organization like this that, definitely has a complex offering, what have you seen have been, the best ways to overcome those inevitable roadblocks that you run into?
Yeah, good question. So we've always, I guess, subscribed to the idea of hire good people and let them tell us what to do, as opposed to, kind of the other way around and telling them what to do.
Mhm.
The only way that that really works, though, is if you're actually transparent with, the team, and as transparent as you possibly can be. Because I think it comes down to the good old two heads are better than one in solving any problem, right? And the more diversity you can add into those, two or four, however many people, the better chance you have at actually solving and finding the correct solution to issues or roadblocks. But if you're only giving and sharing partial information with people, you're only going to get partial solutions out of them also.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot to be said for, being as open and transparent with, again, back to, where we're at before. Not only what are we doing, but here's why we're doing it. And the same comes true with problems. That, okay, here's not just what the problem is, but here is why this is a problem, and here's what's driving this, and here's, all the details we have, to be able to get everybody's, full, I guess, give them full information to help create a full problem, or sorry, a full solution to whatever the problem is.
Yeah. If you can give other founders, I would say, maybe specifically within the space industry, a piece of advice, what would that be?
Just one.
Whatever, or
um,
more.
um, I would say, I mean, I think kind of back to one of the original pieces there of, are you really solving a customer's problem or not? Like, is there a real customer for something? And I think one of our biggest lessons, is one that once you say it, it's kind of obvious. Like, you're not going to solve a problem sitting behind a desk. That you can run simulations, you can run guesses all day long at how big is the market and what did the market report say and how many customers might be out there. But until you actually get out there and talk to the people who are going to be using your products and using your services and using your systems, you're never really going to understand, are you solving a problem or not? Because a lot of times it might be, okay, why is this person using, a high performance satellite navigation service today? Is it because they care about accuracy? Is it because they care about a backup? Is it because they care about something else?
Mhm.
Um, and it might be that one, if you can make one factor 1% better, that might be better than making every other factor 10 times better. And until you really understand that, and again, those are things that don't happen sitting behind a desk. Like, you've just got to get out there and you've got to talk to the people that are your customers, are, that you're going to be working with, to really be able to dig in and solve that.
Yeah. Is there anything that as you got out there speaking with those potential customers as you were developing Zona that was a complete surprise, or maybe had you taking a slightly different direction than what you originally thought?
We've definitely had some, like, I guess, ups, downs, lefts, rights. I think the core, I guess, targets have obviously the same. And I will say we kind of were able to cheat on this a little bit too, since, Tyler, our CTO, came from trying to solve this problem at, someone that we'd like to have as a customer inside the automotive world. So we kind of had the guy that was like writing the performance standards that we need to meet. So that certainly gave us a big head start in understanding that industry. But that being said, there are a lot of other industries that we've certainly learned a lot about, and which ones care more about what aspects of what we're doing. Because satellite navigation is a very, very, very broad. I would say probably about as broad of a user base as you could possibly imagine for any service that we're supporting everything from dog collars to 787s and literally everything in between. And clearly, there's very different needs in terms of accuracy and resilience and threat spaces on both ends of those spectrums. So.
Right, right. So, have you guys actively rolled out to the market at this point, or what's your timescale?
So our first satellite actually went up in May of this year. That's, as far as we know, that established us as the first ever privately funded company to launch a satellite navigation mission, which was, I think, just a huge thing for us and for the industry in general. We're in the process of building up the full production system now. So, the engineering team, largely transitioning over, and we're starting to roll out the full production service. Targeted 2025 timeframe. That there's a lot of work to be able to build that up and get things out and launched. A lot of it is one of the, I guess, unique pieces of satellite navigation, is just the level of reliability it needs to operate at is just massive. And that's one of the things that makes GPS so, the gold standard, is that it's had like seconds of error basically in like 40 years. That it just has such an incredible track record. And that, I mean, when you're supporting so many safety of life, safety critical things, you need to have a very reliable system. So there's just a lot of test cycles that you got to put in, that we want to make sure that when we launch something, we have very high confidence in what we're putting up.
Yeah. What do you think will be some of the first use cases that will take advantage of what Xona is doing?
I think some of the early adopters, largely in the high performance markets. So the classic, I guess, innovators when it comes to high performance satellite navigation, there's actually a lot of focus around agriculture and surveying. And I guess a lot of people don't know that John Deere actually has a very robust high performance satellite navigation unit that either was or still is an entire separate company. And so they were some of the original innovators. And if you're ever driving through Nebraska or anywhere like that, like all those straight crop rows, like that's all high precision GPS that's doing that. So I think there's a lot of potential in the classic high performance stuff. But I think one of the big things and what we're really trying to do is not just serve the classic high performance markets, but I think with the way our system is designed, it's really designed to be able to bring that high performance and scale it and get that high performance out into automotive, into mass mobile, because we're designing the system to put a lot of the heavy lifting into the satellites, into the infrastructure, as opposed to needing it to happen on board every device. And that's really what unlocks a lot of the scalability to get this type of performance into the billions of devices that are out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I want to end with one last question, and that is, if you could make one prediction about the future, what would it be?
Ooh. I guess I've got to stick with the navigation team then, obviously, since we're a navigation company. I do think that even by the end of the decade, we're headed towards a world where very robust sub 10 centimeter positioning is basically ubiquitous. Indoors, outdoors, everywhere, and that's going to be accomplished by a mixture of systems like ours with satellite based, that the superpower satellites, the scalability and the ability to cover wide areas. That's also will be combined with terrestrial based systems, advancements in things like inertial measurements and inertial capability. And I think it's a really exciting world when you start to have those types of capabilities. And imagine, okay, you can tell you went from here to here. And there's the obvious use cases of or I guess even driver assistance, and having a vehicle know when it's straying out of its lane in the middle of a snowstorm when you can't even see the lane lines. And I mean, no number of cameras is going to pick up where that lane line is. And that's true whether that's a human driver or robotic driver. So there's the obvious use cases like that, but then there's all the other things. And I mean, GPS was never built to tell a taxi where it's at. But without it, Uber doesn't exist, Lyft doesn't exist, all these other things don't exist. And when you start to unleash the world of app designers on this really high precision capability, I mean, one example we've given before, you imagine if the average pocket height, let's say, is a meter off the ground, you can make a sub-meter level topographic map of the world, of the civilized world where people are, like overnight. And so I think there's just so many exciting use cases that you can unlock when you start to have that level of capability. So I'm really excited to see, we keep seeing new use cases pop up from things that we never would have expected. And we're still only one demo satellite deep. So I think there's a lot of exciting things to come.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for being here today, Brian, and sharing your story and your insights. We really appreciate it. It was great. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk here today.
Yeah, hopefully we can have you back when things start launching even more, and maybe we can talk about some of those first use cases.
Would love to be back. Absolutely.
Excellent.